Hey guys, welcome back. Right, okay, so before we get into the real stock of the video, let's address the elephant in the room, because I guarantee it's the secondary reason that most of you clicked on this video. The main reason, of course, being my iconic voice. The title. No, you haven't been unknowingly living under a rock, and no, I haven't resorted to a hard, dirty life of clickbaiting. I don't think, at least. Look, the dry period is like Ark levels of bad right now, but it will never be that bad. That is, unless Infinite gets delayed, or E3 gets cancelled, then you never know. Anyway, I digress. So the other day, Big Grey Donut on Twitter directed me towards a video made by fellow YouTuber A Bad Password. A video with a pretty enticing title. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I was expecting a Rickroll or something, but what I got instead was actually a really interesting and well put together video about Halo 5's latest playlist, Mythic Arena. If you don't know, Mythic Arena was an effort by several Halo 5 community members and also members of the Halo 5 sustain team over at 343 to try and create a truly modern classic Halo experience within the constraints of Halo 5. This includes altered base stats, reduced Spartan abilities, and even entirely new, yet extremely classic feeling maps. Now, when this playlist released last year, some people started speculating that it could be a sort of pseudo-secret beta test for Halo Infinite's gameplay and map design and just overall gameplay philosophy, and I never really thought much of it. Quite honestly, I thought Mythic Arena was just another Halo 5 playlist that looked to try and shake things up a bit, considering the game was over 4 years old at that point, and adding another Spartan ability mode would have been quite stale and not like anything they'd done before. It looked fun and all, don't get me wrong, but I thought people were sort of blowing it out of proportion just a little bit. However, that was until I watched A Bad Password's video. Now, I don't know what it was, if it was the way that he put his points across, his stellar commentary, or I don't know, something, but something about his video clicked in my head, and I knew that I had to make a video about it. Without sounding all crazy and melodramatic, it was like I had a calling that I needed to answer, and so this video is exactly that. So, huge shout out to A Bad Password for giving me the inspiration to make this video. You can check out his channel in the description, I highly recommend it, and also thank you to Donut for pointing it my way. But now that I've put myself on trial and hopefully successfully acquitted myself from the high crime of clickbait, let's dive into the topic at hand. So, when I was watching Password's video, I suddenly realised that I never actually got round to trying Mythic Arena. And so, before I A, decide whether or not I actually like the mode in the first place, and B, decide whether I think it's likely to be a sort of litmus test for Infinite's gameplay and multiplayer, I've got to actually try the game mode. So, I sat down and played a few hours of the playlist, and let me tell you, I've not been this annoyed playing a video game, let alone a Halo game, in a long time. I love almost every single idea this playlist presents. BR starts, the maps, the aesthetics of the maps, the weapon placements, it's all so good. But I literally cannot enjoy it because of Halo 5's god-awful weapon balancing. Every weapon shoots like a fucking laser. It's easier to 4-shot someone across the map with the Halo 2 battle rifle than it is to pick faults with Halo 5's campaign. And it's all because of enhanced mobility. Halo 5's core was designed entirely around enhanced mobility, around the player moving at a much faster average pace than any Halo before, and thus, the bullet magnetism had to be turned up on almost every weapon. Now, that's bad enough as it is, but when you take away those abilities, and more so, when you try and recreate a proper classic experience, everything's overpowered and can cross-map you. It just flat out doesn't work, and it's made even worse by the fact that the Halo 2 battle rifle in Halo 5 functions absolutely nothing like the actual Halo 2 battle rifle. Never in my life have I seen a more perfect example of why a Halo game should never, ever be designed around enhanced mobility. Classic experiences are essentially just ruined from the get-go, thanks to the changes that have to be made to the core of the game to accommodate enhanced mobility, whereas if you design the core of the game around classic gameplay, abilities can then be added as optional extras to have alongside a classic experience, because core aspects of the game aren't altered to accommodate any specific type of gameplay. I'll touch on this idea more later on in a video because it's something that I really think could work for Infinite, but for now, let's take a look at what Mythic Arena does right. And what it does right is, well, almost everything. The maps are really cool in both aesthetic and also design. From an aesthetic standpoint, they're rather simple and blocky, which at first might seem quite cheap, but to me, it gives me a sort of Combat Evolved / Quake / Unreal Tournament vibe, almost as if the maps are designed in more ways than one to resemble a classic arena shooter style of map. And fitting with that is their design. From a design and layout standpoint, the maps are, again, rather simple, at least at a first glance. Much like classic arena shooter maps, their simple blocky layouts are full of secret trick jumps that, unlike using clamber, actually take a modicum of skill to pull off. There are so many ledges, blocks, windows, and gaps in walls that you can use to traverse around the map in a really unconventional way. Something Halo maps used to have in abundance up until Reach, and they're an absolutely welcome return. When maps have this level of depth, it gives them their own sort of skill gap, and it makes you want to come back and play them again and again and again until they become your own virtual climbing gym, and I really hope that Infinite's map design takes some notes from this. However, regarding the maps, I do have one issue. They all seem a bit too small and narrow and almost clusterfucky. Like, oftentimes I'll find myself getting disorientated by how small some of the corridors are. But actually, to be fair, that might be down to Halo 5's painfully low field of view. Doesn't help either that I've been playing PC FPSs almost exclusively for the past year at like 100 FOV plus, and I'm not used to a console game with really low locked field of view. That could definitely be a contributing factor. As for the weapons, it's not exactly the variety that I'd expect from a full game, but for a single playlist, I'm fine with it, honestly. It's a small and very simple sandbox of weapons. I think the only weapons in it are the BR, the SMG, the plasma rifle, shotgun, sniper, rockets, carbine, sentinel beam, plasma caster, railgun, and binary rifle. That sounds like a lot of weapons, but compared to the amount that Halo 5 has, it's really not that many. And I think the best thing about this is that none of the weapons have overlapping roles. Unlike in the vanilla game, and also in like Halo 4 and even to a degree Reach, where so many of the weapons overlap each other and sort of invalidate each other, each weapon in Mythic has a specific role to play, so it's a rather clean sandbox if you can kind of catch my drift. Of course, like I already said, the biggest issue with the weapons is something that the Mythic team could not change, unfortunately, the bullet magnetism, just awful levels of bullet magnetism that's tied to the game, but like I said, that's not a fault of the playlist or the people that made it, that's Halo 5. And then there's the biggest thing, the gameplay itself. Mythic features extremely toned down Spartan abilities in an effort to try and create a sort of hybrid classic modern gameplay experience. The only abilities left over are Thrust, Aim Down Sights, and Stabilize. Now, because of the limited weapon sandbox, aiming down sights isn't as offensive as it was in vanilla Halo 5, but it's still just completely unnecessary and, in my opinion, has absolutely no place in Halo, especially on non-precision weapons like the SMG and the plasma rifle. Stabilize, I barely used, and I barely see anyone else using it either, and frankly, I forgot it even existed until I'd played a few games, and Thrust just seems like it was kept in there for the sake of it. From what I can tell, it's extremely nerfed with a longer cooldown, much shorter distance, and also slower travel speed, I think. And honestly, it makes it feel like even more of a gimmick now than it did in regular Halo 5. It's not entirely useless, don't get me wrong, but nobody ever really seems to use it. I also barely used it, and even when I did, I didn't feel like it gave me that much of an advantage. It really feels like it was just left in there for the sake of it as opposed to being actually useful. And lastly, the movement speed just feels a little bit too slow, even with how small the maps are. In my opinion, all future classic Halo experiences should take notes from Halo 3's MLG playlist, and up the base move speed like that did to 110%, just to give you a little bit of a boost in speed. Or, you know, alternatively, just let people on console change their field of view. Increasing the field of view by as little as like 10 to 20 degrees goes such a long way in making games feel faster without anything needing to be tweaked. So, to answer the big question of the day, do I think that Mythic Arena is a pseudo beta test for Halo Infinite's gameplay and multiplayer? Quite possibly, yeah, for a multitude of reasons. Firstly, I think that over 4 years into Halo 5's life cycle is a bit of a weird time to be introducing such a radically new and different playlist, especially one with as much care and effort put into it as Mythic. Unless, of course, there's something that 343 seek to gain from it beyond returning players. I mean, I imagine that right now, like 99% of their gaze is firmly set on Infinite. I highly doubt they're worrying about Halo 5's playlist diversity at this point, so I can't help but think for that reason alone, this playlist is somewhat of a litmus test. Secondly, the properties of this playlist are perfectly in line with the direction 343 are taking Infinite. A return to classic Halo, but with a light dusting of modern Halo. That's the approach that they seem to be taking with Infinite, and it's the exact approach they've taken with this playlist. And thirdly, building off of that, the gameplay of Mythic Arena seems to be trying to create a sort of middle ground compromise between the wants of classic fans and the wants of modern fans. No sprint, no slide, no ground pound, no Spartan charge, no clamber, which ensures the game doesn't play at like hyperspeed with people flying at you from all directions, but ADS is still there, stabilize is still there, and thrust is still there to sort of satisfy the enhanced mobility wants of most modern fans. It all adds up a little bit too neatly, if you ask me. That said, Mythic is very clearly lacking sprint, and recently we may have, unfortunately, had our first sneak preview of sprint in Infinite. This is pretty old news by this point, but like last month I think it was, 343 released a new promotional type video for their studio called We Are 343, and a few minutes into it, in the background, there's a playtest going on, more than likely for Infinite, and as you can see, a sprinting animation. And before anybody says it in the comments, the animation isn't the same as Halo 5's, this is something new, and unless 343 are working on another Halo FPS at the same time as Infinite, which I think is highly, highly unlikely, this is a sprint animation for Halo Infinite, which is already, you know, quite a big red flag for me. Gonna be quite honest here, it's a pretty big red flag. So, maybe Mythic Arena is being used as a sort of general litmus test for a more classic Halo experience, but at the same time isn't exactly how Halo Infinite is going to play. Or maybe Mythic Arena is just a new Halo 5 playlist, nothing more, nothing less. I'm leaning towards the former, for now, for sure. I doubt that Infinite is going to be identical to the playlist, but at the same time, I think it will go in a similar direction to it. However, before I round this video off, I just want to make a quick point about the direction of Infinite's gameplay. I strongly believe that it should be entirely classic. Enhanced mobility is not only a dead trend, it's a trend that clearly hasn't worked out for Halo. That said, however, I do not want Halo Infinite to treat fans of enhanced mobility Halo the way that Halo 4 and Halo 5 treated fans of classic Halo. I and many others know how it feels to be completely unable to play Halo the way that we believe it should be played, even in custom games. Despite giving us the ability to disable sprint and all the other abilities in Halo 5, the fact that the core of the game was designed purposefully around those abilities completely ruins any classic Halo experience. The dev-made maps don't work with it, the weapons don't work with it, the vehicles don't work with it. Essentially, what that does is tells any classic Halo fan to go and play another Halo game if they want the Halo experience that they prefer. Which sucks, and no group of Halo fans should ever be told that. So if Infinite does go back to Classic, which means no Spartan abilities whatsoever, I still absolutely think they should be available for use in custom games to satisfy those who expect those abilities from a Halo game. There is also the possibility that Infinite is both a completely classic and completely enhanced mobility game, with playlists that separate the two, but again, I doubt it. I don't see that happening. To do that, 343 would have to make basically two entirely different weapon sandboxes and vehicle sandboxes, and maps would have to be altered for each playlist. I don't see it happening. I really don't. The core of the game would be completely different between two different playlists, which would probably end up feeling really jarring to new players. The too long don't read is that if the core of Infinite is designed and balanced around classic Halo, enhanced mobility can slot in perfectly fine as an optional extra in customs or maybe even in its own unique game mode. However, the same cannot be said the other way around. And so, that's all I've got to say about Mythic Arena. Do I think that it's a pseudo beta test for Halo Infinite? Quite possibly. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that it may well be just that. But then again, we can't say for sure until we see gameplay, which is more than likely not going to happen until E3, which even then might not even be when it happens, because right now it's looking like, due to a certain virus, E3 may even get delayed. So if it does, God forbid it does, then who knows? Who knows when we're going to see Halo Infinite gameplay. But yeah, that's all for today. Don't forget to give me your thoughts on Mythic Arena and whether you think it's a beta test for Infinite down below in the comments. And that's all for today. I've said that like 3 times now, so let's end the video. Huge thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon for the continued support, and thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one, which is going to be a Combat Evolved lore video. Hell yeah.